So here are the 10 steps to beat diabetes. This is inside the Baja Peninsula in Mexico. 1, lower saturated fat. Saturated fats should be kept to less than 6% of calories. That's about 12 grams per day. The 12 grams is easy because almost every food with a package has saturated fat listed right on the package. You can read it, and it's amazing how much some foods have per serving. And sometimes, like on a little carton of ice cream, it'll say 3 servings, but that's 3 1-cup servings. Or actually, it's less than a cup. Anyway, the servings are small. So you have to adjust for how much of that you eat. If you eat the whole carton, then you've eaten 3 servings, and you may have gotten 30 or 40 grams of saturated fat in that one small carton of ice cream. You have to keep track of it. Read labels, add up your saturated fats, avoid animal fats and coconut fats, and you'll be well on your way. This is from my book, Fats and Oils Demystified. It's available on my website, drsteveblake.com, in ebook form for under $10. It's a big textbook. I think we should all know the names of the saturated fats, the unsaturated fats, and especially the 2 essential fatty acids. We should know more about our fats. So I wrote this book so we could do that. In this, we find that one hamburger, 12 grams of saturated fat. So you've blown your whole day on this double hamburger with bun. Cheddar cheese, 24 grams of saturated fat, but you get only 12 per day. It's twice as much saturated fat as you should get in a whole day with a modest serving of cheddar cheese. If you're eating pizza, you can eat a lot more than that. Butter, 14 grams. Bologna, 13 grams. These are all too high. Even if you ate just 1 serving of these foods in the entire day and ate nothing else, you'd still exceed your saturated fat limit. Spam's high. Is a local man here reading a Spam can in a store, and he said, "Can you read the saturated fats? I'm supposed to keep it down." And I read it, and it was a little can. And I said, "Okay, it says 6 grams of saturated fat per serving, and that's 1/3 of a can." He says, "I eat 2 cans. How much is that?" Too much. So be careful of those servings. This lady, Tina Kiona, when I joined this program, I was very skeptical, but very quickly I started to feel better. The cramps in my legs disappeared, and I no longer had to get up during the night to go to the bathroom. My sugars kept dropping and are now normal without any medication. My last lab test showed that I am no longer diabetic. People can hardly believe what has happened to me. Kind of nice to hear about someone who beat it, isn't it? And she was skeptical at the beginning. Number 2 on the anti-diabetes diet is to minimize refined carbohydrates. Crackers, cookies, anything made from white flour is going to release sugar into your bloodstream very quickly. A lot of American diets, the refined carbohydrates make up 90% of the carbohydrates that people eat, and almost everything they eat is going to raise their blood sugar very quickly. Another thing about refined carbohydrates, they don't tend to have fiber, so you can overeat. You can just keep eating and eating without ever getting full. If you eat too much carbohydrates, and this is not well known, but I think it's interesting. Let's say you drink a 6-pack of sugary soda during the day. That excess sugar, it can be made into palmitic acid in your liver. That's one of the ways we dispose of excess sugars. And that palmitic acid can then increase insulin resistance and make diabetes worse. So this is one way that sugar creates saturated fats, increasing insulin resistance. Refined carbs that Americans eat too much of, sugary drinks, any food containing sugar and corn syrup. I mean, a tiny amount won't be a problem, but most foods, they put a lot in. White rice is a big problem here in Hawaii, and white flour and all the products made from it. Here's some slow grains. On the top, we have my book, Vitamins and Minerals Demystified, and this talks about the vitamins and minerals that we need for life. I wrote it for McGraw-Hill. And that is also available on my website, It's perhaps just a little more than $10, but it's what they charge. Not more than 20, I don't think, for the whole book. So slowest grains are intact whole grains, like wild rice, brown rice, or oats that have been perhaps chopped but not ground up. Broken whole grains, like steel cut oats would be an example of broken whole grains, and 12 grain cereal. And then rolled oats are a little bit faster releasing, but still not usually a problem. That'd be oatmeal and rolled barley. Then when you get into shredded whole grains like shredded wheat, it's a little bit faster, and ground whole grains like whole wheat flour products, those absorb faster yet. So it's best to stay at the top of these intact whole grains, wild rice, brown rice, oatmeal, those kinds of things. Grains to avoid, white rice. Flaked whole grains like corn flakes. You know, they take corn and when they smash it flat into a flake, it absorbs very quickly. White flour can be in spaghetti, bread, cakes, cookies, and a zillion forms. And puffed whole grains like puffed rice, long a health food staple, actually puffed rice absorbs into the bloodstream and raises glucose very quickly. Here's Marie Madison. When I joined, I could not lift my hands above my head without significant pain. Now I'm pain-free. My cholesterol and triglycerides have dropped to normal, and my sugars are almost normal too. I've lost weight and feel like a new person. I'm now off all medications. It's unbelievable. Isn't that nice? Number 3 on the anti-diabetes diet, maximize whole plant carbohydrates. This image is a good example. Vegetables and beans, mushrooms, onions, bell peppers, these are foods that are going to not raise your blood sugar, but give you those wonderful antioxidants that protect your eyes and your bloodstream, that protect your brain and your kidneys from damage caused by too much sugar, and damage caused by many other things too. So vegetables, fruits, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and beans, they all have fiber, antioxidants, and vitamins and minerals. If you look around the world, the places with the lowest chronic disease are places that eat food like this. There are 2 indices of sugar in food, glycemic load, which is correct, and glycemic index, which is not reliable, usually just flat wrong. You focus on vegetables and beans, nuts and berries are good. Limit servings of white potatoes and refined grains. Try and get those whole grains or baked grains. Now, the graph below shows fast food like sugar and flour, and they spike your blood sugar right away. This is a 3-hour graph here. So within 1 hour, those foods have dumped sugar into your bloodstream during that hour. Even in a half an hour, it's peaked out. But if you're eating beans and nuts and other slow foods, then over 3 hours, you get a slow increase in blood sugar and a slow decrease in blood sugar, which is just perfect. Doesn't damage anything. Now, glycemic index only looks at how fast 50 grams of sugar, which for watermelon is 5 cups of watermelon, is absorbed. 5 cups of watermelon is quite a lot. Glycemic load, though, the more accurate one, takes into account how much sugar there is in a food. So if you look at glycemic index, watermelon is very high and you shouldn't eat it because it's the incorrect glycemic index is saying don't eat it. But if you look at glycemic load, it shows that there's very little sugar in it. So you want to know, does this raise my blood sugar? That's what you want to know. And no, watermelon doesn't raise your blood sugar. By the time you eat it and chew it and swallow it, it has so little sugar that by the time you get to the next slice, the sugar you've already eaten is all burned up. It does not raise your blood sugar. So you really need to look at glycemic load only and never glycemic index. Unfortunately, many health professionals haven't switched over. It's been decades since we've known this. Here's a glycemic load for fruit. Now, I think that it's a huge mistake for people to be advised not to eat any fruit on a diabetic diet. Why? Because these fruits, especially the berries and many of the fruits, have antioxidants that are very powerful to protect us. And they're being told to eat no fruit at all. But if you look at the glycemic load, the low glycemic load fruits are oranges, papayas, grapes, pears, apples, sweet cherries, strawberries, and other berries are very slow releasing and have little sugar to begin with. Peach, grapefruit, and plums. Plums are kind of sour, as you know. They have very little sugar. So if you look at this, you can see that the slower fruits are very beneficial for people with diabetes. And now mangoes and bananas are pretty sugary. They're medium in their load, so that perhaps someone with diabetes would want to eat a half or a third of a banana and not the whole thing in order to limit the increase in blood sugar. This study looked at the risk of diabetes of fruit. Now, notice that fruit juice or dried fruit is different. This is only for whole intact fruit that you're chewing up. But the blueberries, 33% less risk in those who ate blueberries for diabetes. So blueberries are very helpful. They're very high in antioxidants. They have anthocyanins that are very helpful to our brains so that we can think clearly. It's a dangerous mistake to limit fruit. Among those fruits that reduce the risk of diabetes are strawberries, oranges, peaches, plums, apricots, grapefruit, bananas, apples and pears, prunes, grapes and raisins, and blueberries. That's a lot of fruit that lowers your risk. And this is good to know, and also quite pleasant. If you've been told not to eat fruit, now you can eat the slow-releasing fruit. Lorac was a pilot. My pilot's medical certificate was denied when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I'm 38 years old. I became a participant in the diabetes wellness program, completely changed my diet, and began a daily exercise program. Upon my last physical checkup, I was told I'm fully recovered. My pilot's license certificate was approved. My fasting blood sugar is below 90 milligrams per deciliter, well in the normal range, with no medications. I no longer have diabetes. I have my career and my life back. It's inspiring, but do notice that he said I completely changed my diet. And if you have diabetes, it is somewhat likely that your diet will need more change, not just a little, okay? Because this is a diet-induced illness. Number 5 on the anti-diabetes diet is a high-fiber diet. Now, the RDA for fiber is 20 grams per day, but we're recommending at least 40. That's what I consider a healthy fiber intake. Fiber is really beneficial. It improves blood sugar control. When you eat a food with fiber, the blood sugar is introduced into your body very slowly. Fiber increases fullness, so you tend not to overeat. Fiber ushers cholesterol out of your body by binding to cholesterol in the intestine. And fiber obviously improves digestion, reduces constipation. Lower fiber ranges, say the RDA of 20 grams per day, may not be sufficient for blood sugar control and keep things down. So oatmeal with nuts and a few raisins here is a lot of viscous fiber. It is the viscous fiber we're talking about. Wheat bran and cellulose fiber doesn't help with this, but viscous fiber helps to control blood sugar after eating. Beans, barley, oats, and flax seeds were used extensively in this anti-diabetes diet. And fruits, nuts, and vegetables, of course, have great fiber too. There are low fiber foods, and then there are zero fiber foods. Low fiber foods are like refined carbohydrates, white rice, white flour. They have a little bit of fiber, but not much, not enough. Zero fiber foods, meat, poultry, fish, any animal product, cheese should be in there, has no fiber at all, zero. Dairy products and eggs, there it is, no fiber at all. Sugar, zero fiber, it's all taken out. And oil, zero fiber, it's all taken out. So avoiding zero fiber foods is a good idea. I'm not saying absolutely zero sugar, but keep it down to a very small amount. Now, number 6 out of 10 on the anti-diabetes diet, how to do it yourself. High-fat diets. You don't want to look like this kitty. Too much fat increases oxidative damage. The fat, when it gets oxidized, creates malondialdehyde, which can cause DNA adducts and increase risk of cancer, for example. The high fat contributes to insulin resistance. It's not just saturated fats that can damage beta cells that make the insulin, but if you just have way too much fat in your diet, that can also damage the cells, the very cells that make the insulin. And of course, too much fat, it's hard to lose weight if you're eating too much fat. This amount of fat, 20 to 25% of calories, looks just about perfect to me. I've analyzed diets with my own Diet Doctor software tool that I created for this for many decades. And I've analyzed many diets. I think the lowest was maybe 8% of calories, and the highest, oh, way too high. In making up diets and trying to see what's the lowest diet where you can get just the essential fatty acids, 17% of calories, it's the lowest that I can design a diet in order to get the essential fatty acids and vitamin E in sufficient quantities. So any recommendations below 17% can't possibly meet human needs for essential fatty acids and vitamin E. So 20 to 25%, you can meet human needs, and it's still nice and low enough for you to keep your weight down. So in this study, they stopped refined oils and spreads like butter and margarine, and any refined oils. Can get your fats from nuts and seeds and avocados and nut butters and whole foods. Number 7 is to avoid trans fats. And trans fats from industrial hydrogenated oils have been reduced in the United States. That's a good thing. Did you know that beef and dairy products have trans fats, and that may be the major source of trans fats, the very same trans fats that are in hydrogenated oils? And that may be the biggest source for some Americans. It varies from 40 to 60% in some countries. So you want to avoid them, both the beef and dairy product source and the partially hydrogenated vegetable oils. If you eat them, they can reduce the number of insulin receptors on your cell membranes, just like saturated fats do. I'll show you an image later. They raise blood cholesterol, increasing risk of heart disease, increase inflammation, and that can contribute to insulin resistance. Sources of trans fats, 40% comes from cakes, cookies, crackers, pies, and bread. And this is from partially hydrogenated oils added to those. 21% in America from animal products. I noted that it was 60% in Australia and 40% in Canada. Margarine can be a contributor, and then the others, fried potatoes, potato chips, less of a problem for trans fats. Now, number 8 on the anti-diabetes diet is getting enough omega-3 fatty acids. We know that there are 2 essential fatty acids for humans. Do you know what they are? One of them is an omega-3 alpha-linolenic acid. This is only obtained from plants. No, fish don't have any. And then we can take that omega-3 alpha-linolenic acid and we can make the EPA and DHA and all of the eicosanoids from that, and docosanoids as well. The omega-3 fatty acids improve the cell membrane that can increase insulin sensitivity. I'll show you an image here in a little while. So include plant sources of omega-3 fatty acids, 1 tablespoon of ground flax seeds. I recommend organic flax seeds because did you know some flax seeds have been genetically modified? And a handful of walnuts is a great idea. If you're having digestive problems like bowel pockets, you might want to grind up the walnuts. And of course, you need to grind the flax seeds just so they're digestible. About 3 grams of omega-3 fatty acids should be included in the daily diet. Most people don't get that much. But if you get more, you can help your insulin resistance and make those cells more sensitive to insulin, getting sugar out of your bloodstream faster. So walnuts just can by themselves get you enough of these omega-3s, 2.7 grams per ounce, 1 ounce. Flax seeds are good too. Flax seeds, 2.6 grams per tablespoon. Hemp seeds, a little bit less, and leafy greens. I've heard some experts say you can get your omega-3s from leafy greens, but at 0.1 gram per cup, someone has a calculator, they might find out that you need about a 5-gallon bucket of leafy greens to get your omega-3s for the day. And unless you're a cow, I don't think that's going to happen. Leafy greens are great. They're great food. They're great for you in a million ways. but just they're not very helpful with omega-3s. Now, I want to talk a little bit about fish and EPA and DHA. A lot of people think that if they eat fish, they can get their omega-3s. This study, I looked at this study over and over again. It's in Diabetes Care, a journal, and the risk of diabetes was increased 38 times from the pollutants in fish. DDT, polychlorinated bipheноls, organochlorine pesticides. In a large national health examination survey, those who had more of these pollutants had 38 times the risk of diabetes. Now, it might not be such a good idea to eat fish since they're so polluted. That's my point with this slide. Where are these polychlorinated bipheноls? And now they have a newer polybrominated diphenyl ethers. That's a mouthful. Call them PBDEs if you want. Where do they come from? The biggest source is fish oil. So a lot of people are taking fish oil for their health and not realizing that they may be getting large amounts of these and also the organochlorine pesticides, DDT, dioxins, concentrated, bioaccumulated in fish oil, and fish, number 2 on the list. Eggs and dairy products and baby foods and beef also have some. There's a tiny amount in vegetable oil. The good news, fruits, vegetables, cereals, practically zero of these environmental pollutants. So they're safe to eat. They're not going to raise your risk of diabetes 38 times. Now we come to number 9, plant antioxidants. As I mentioned, high levels of antioxidants in the diet of people with diabetes can decrease eye damage, making diabetic retinopathy less likely, kidney damage, making dialysis less likely, and reduce heart attacks and strokes. When you look at people with diabetes, they tend to have poor antioxidant status, especially when blood sugar is poorly controlled. The risk of prediabetes in this study was reduced 90% with more whole plants. Diets rich in fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts, legumes, and other plant foods protected against prediabetes. They contain polyphenols, which is a large class, all anti-inflammatory, many antioxidant, flavonoids like quercetin are in this group, and many others. Phytoestrogens, these are found in beans, such as dazdine and genistein, and phytoestrogens are anti-inflammatory. Sulforaphanes found in the whole cruciferous class of vegetables, so kale, broccoli, chard, cabbage, and so on. And plant sterols are antioxidant and reduce inflammation. It's from a large study. If we look at the standard American diet here, this is a slide from my Diet Doctor software, we see that the vitamin C is much lower. The top blue bar shows how much you got in this day, and the bottom bar shows how much you need at a bare minimum. And it wasn't even half the bare minimum. The vitamin E was about a third of the bare minimum. Note that only 7% at last count of Americans get even the bare minimum of vitamin E. So, of course, it's very, very likely that if you're eating a normal diet, you won't get enough vitamin E. Those walnuts I mentioned will give you very nice vitamin E, especially in the gamma tocopherol form. Looking at a whole plant diet, the antioxidants are great. The vitamin A in the form of carotenoids, very antioxidant and were very high. The vitamin C was nicely far above 350 milligrams, versus 75 recommended, 90 for a smoker. The vitamin E also was 28 versus a 15 recommended. And all of the other vitamins were very nice on this diet too, except for vitamin B12, which I think practically everyone needs to take. I certainly do. This is the Diet Doctor software. You can email me for an analysis. That's the easiest way. Some brave people will download the software and do it themselves, but it's really kind of difficult to look through the 292,000 food choices and pick the right ones and get the amounts just right. So I do charge a fee for dietary analysis, but you can email me if you're interested. To improve the antioxidant status on the Majuro diet, they had 9 servings per day of vegetables and fruits. So lots of vegetables and fruits, like this picture. Had 2 servings a day of beans. Very good. Beans really help to fill you up and make you feel like you've gotten enough protein. Nuts, at least 1 serving a day, and seeds 1 serving a day. And then there were whole grains, 3 servings a day to meet energy needs. What about antioxidant supplements? You should plan for most of your antioxidants to come from food. During the Hawaii Dementia Prevention Trial, we had supplements made for the study participants. When news got out, I was working at the largest neuroscience center in the Pacific with 24,000 patient visits per year. News got out that these people were getting better very quickly, and people wanted the supplements, but they couldn't get them because they were restricted to study participants. So I made this brain and body food, which includes most of the things we put in for the people to keep their brains from decaying. Actually, the brains got better during this study instead of worse. But it just happens to contain, because as I mentioned, I'm the author of a college textbook from McGraw-Hill on vitamins and minerals. It contains all of the essential vitamins and minerals in the correct forms, at the correct dosages. This is the only vitamin I take. So you might consider that. I have some problems with other multivitamins because they use a fake form of vitamin E, which could actually be slightly damaging rather than helpful. And they also can use a form of folate called folic acid that in higher levels can increase risk of cancer. You have to be very, very careful with each of these essential vitamins and minerals that they're in the right form. And I understand that the industry produces supplements for profit, and that's their only reason. I made this one for myself so that I can have something that I could recommend. I do sell it, I do make a profit, so I'll make a disclaimer there. Vitamin C is a powerful antioxidant. It might be good to get more than you can get from food. Vitamin E should be, read your label. If your supplement of vitamin E or multivitamin says RRR-alpha tocopherol form, please email me right away. I have never seen this in a health food store or grocery store, or a box store, anywhere. That's real vitamin E. It also is nice if it contains the gamma, beta, and delta tocopherol, the other real vitamin E. Vitamin A should be mostly from carotenoids. A certain amount is good to be preformed, but it should be mostly from carotenoids or from fruits and vegetables. Number 10 on the anti-diabetes diet, and I think this is important too, we need to avoid dietary contaminants that are going to pollute us. Meat has pesticides, hormones, antibiotics, heavy metals, PCBs, DDT, dioxins. Now, fried foods, when they're heated to high temperatures, not only can be rancid, they can contain oxysterols, oxidized cholesterol, and advanced glycation end products that are highly inflammatory and actually increase insulin resistance. Pro-inflammatory molecules, these advanced glycation end products, are found whenever meat, chicken, or fish are barbecued, broiled, fried, or even baked to brown, and they're found in aged cheese. In other words, animal products the way people like them. There are other byproducts of high temperature cooking to look out for. These form in animal products, but not so much in plant foods. I did just write a paper on advanced glycation end products, and then I wrote another paper on them and other sources of inflammation. These papers are about inflammation in the brain, but it's very relevant to people too. Now, advanced glycation end products can be formed in the blood when there are high levels of sugar and low levels of antioxidants. This is the problem with diabetes. This is what creates the damage in diabetes. This is what creates A1C levels that are high. However, the AGs are also formed in any animal-derived food when it's cooked at high temperatures or stored, and as I mentioned, also in aged cheeses. They increase oxidative stress and inflammation in the body.